All right, so starting off chapter 3, we're going to talk about calculating our food cost. So as we're doing this, we're going to define what our food cost is and how we analyze and track our food costs. Then also we're actually going to calculate the cost of sales versus the actual cost of sales. All right, so what is food cost? Simply put, food cost is the cost of the food and the ingredients as we are using them to produce product. So, in a sense, food only becomes part of the food cost when we are actually using it to prepare an item for sale. Okay, so let's think about it this way. If you are a baker and you bought a 50-pound bag of flour, and your bread recipe calls for 5 pounds of flour. Well, we should only be looking at the cost percentage, about the food cost of those 5 pounds of flour, not the full 50-pound bag, because we're going to use that other 45 pounds in that bag for other recipes. So when we're looking at the food cost to prepare that particular item, we're only looking at the portion of the item that we bought, the ingredient that we bought, that we were using specifically for our production of food product. Same thing like if we purchased, a case that had 3 boxes of shrimp in it. And when I pull the one box out, but the other two stay in my inventory, in my storage, then really I should only be looking at the cost of that one box of shrimp, not the whole case in itself. So remember, food only becomes part of the food cost when it is in production. So we can look at our inventory. We can actually calculate a dollar amount for our beginning inventory, what we have in storage. We can look at all the purchases for that particular period that we're looking at. And then at the end, when we look at what's in our ending inventory, it helps us identify what product we actually used to produce food during that period. So where do we get all of these dollar figures? Well, we can look at our purchases and our invoices from all of our different purchases. We can look at, for the month, we can look at our purchases to determine how much we paid for things when we want to value our beginning and ending inventory. So this is an overall view of invoices for each particular date that we received product. Here's an example of an invoice that I received as the head cook of the Acadia Institute of Oceanography in Maine. And this is my invoice that I received from the driver. That when they dropped off my food order, they would essentially have everything broken down. So let's take a look really quickly at this invoice. The first column is my item number. So if I wanted to order this number again, I could call and I want to order that specific number. I would ask for that number, item number. Here, the second column tells me how many cases, how many items I actually ordered, and then also how many were shipped. The pack tells me what the size or how many things are in a case, and the size will tell me the total weight. Okay. The next one is the description, so it kind of tells you exactly what that item is, the price, and then extension is the total price. So the price is for one item, extension is for all the items that I particularly ordered. So let's take a look real quick. So Roma is my brand. I had 25 pounds of flour, and there was one of them. I ordered one 25-pound bag of sugar. Okay. Then I have right here my West Creek chicken breast. They're jumbo, boneless, skinless. And I got 4 10 pounds. Okay. My Hood milk, 22%. Hood is the brand. 5 gallons, there's one of them. And then let's move on to the frozen. So you'll see the Heritage Oven hamburger buns. They're 4 inches, they're sliced, and I ordered 2 and they shipped 2. So that's the only one that's going to be different right here. The price is $29.50 for those 96 hamburger buns. And so $29.50 times 2, because I had 2 shipped, is $59. So that's where I get my invoice total from. So you can see again, like there's a lot of different ways that you can look at and get information. So I know that my spaghetti sauces, let's look at spaghetti sauces. I have 6 spaghetti number 10 cans. That's the big giant can. Okay, so there's 6 of those per case. And so that's $28.75 for that one case of 6 cans. If I only used 2 cans of spaghetti sauce, then I can actually calculate what the remaining 4 cans of spaghetti sauce cost me that are sitting in my inventory. Okay, so to do that, really simply, we do our cost of $28.75. We divide that by our 6 cans. Okay, and so $28.75 divided by 6 is, so that 28.75 divided by 6 cans is $4.79 per can of spaghetti sauce. So if I still have 4 in my inventory, then I can multiply by 4. Hey Siri, what is 4.79 times 4?
4.79 times 4 is 19.16.
So $19.16 is the cost of those 4 remaining cans of spaghetti sauce in my inventory. And that's going to become important here in just a moment. As we calculate our basic cost of goods sold, okay? So remember, we're calculating what's called the cost of goods sold. And the key word here is goods sold. Okay, that key phrase, we want to figure out what exactly the cost of the things we actually sold. So we'll need our beginning inventory value. We can go into our inventory, we can calculate the dollar amount of every single item that's in our inventory. Then we want to add all of our purchases for the whole month or for the whole period. Whatever we receive, we get that in. Then we are going to calculate our ending inventory. So go back into inventory at the end of the period and figure out what the value of that is. We are going to subtract our ending inventory, and that will give us our cost of goods sold. Because remember, food only becomes part of the food cost when it has been in production. So if it is in our inventory as an ending inventory number, then we can assume that it's not in production. And so it cannot be part of our cost of goods sold. Now the really cool thing is that whatever this ending inventory is automatically becomes the beginning inventory of the next period. Okay, becomes that beginning inventory of the next period. Because we close business on the 31st, and when we open on the 1st, that's what our new inventory is. We haven't done anything, we haven't pulled anything out, so our ending inventory then becomes our beginning inventory for the new period. So that's our cost of sales formula. Again, we take our beginning inventory, BI, beginning inventory. We add all the purchases. That becomes our total available inventory, meaning that's the total amount of money we have available to produce the food for that particular period. Now we subtract our ending inventory, and that gives us our cost of goods sold. I'm going to abbreviate that with COGS, cost of goods sold. Okay. Now, that will give us a pretty general idea of what the cost it took us to produce all of the food. Now, what we can do is we can calculate an actual cost of sales. We have to take in some other considerations into play to calculate the actual cost of sales. So let's talk about those. The credits. So different credits that we need to apply remember, this is our costs of goods sold. The key here is goods sold. If we are providing our employees free meals, a lot of times hotels will have a cafeteria. Employees might, give a very nominal fee, or they may even be a complimentary meal. And so if that's the case, we're not selling that particular meal to the public, right? And so what we'll have to do is we'll actually have to subtract that from the cost, the ingredients of those, the cost of those ingredients. We need to subtract those from our cost of goods sold because we're not actually selling them. Same thing with comp meals. Now with comp meals, if someone's upset or if, whatever reason, if we comp a meal, then that is not something that we sold. We did not receive revenue for that particular meal. Now, that being said, our employee meals and our comp meals, they should have different line items on the budget. They should have different line items if you're going to separate them out. And the reason why we want to separate these out is because it will give us a more accurate account of the cost of the goods that we actually sold. Not necessarily the food that we prepared, but the cost of the food and the goods that we sold. The last thing is our grease sales. Okay, so sometimes, we might send our grease out and we might sell our grease. There's companies that purchase it. If we receive money from that, we need to subtract those original purchases. So if I purchase the grease and it's one of my purchases in my formula, then I need to actually subtract that in the end, because if I'm going to get money for it, then it kind of just takes that out of the equation. The other thing we want to take into consideration when we're calculating the actual cost of goods sold is any transfers that take place. So if we have food that goes to the bar, or beverages or liquor from the bar that comes to the kitchen, we need to transfer that. Because when a beverage is involved in the production of food, let's say we have a white wine sauce, then that wine comes from the bar to the kitchen is now actually a food cost, because it's in the use of the production of a food item. Now, let's say a food item like, I don't know, an orange is a garnish for a beverage, a mixed drink cocktail. Well, then that orange comes from the kitchen and goes to the bar, but because it's in production of a beverage, even though it's technically a food item, it now becomes part of our beverage cost, okay? We also might do some other unit transfers. So when I worked for Chester's Hamburgers, oftentimes, if one store was really busier than they anticipated, and they were running short on buns, or they were running short on meat, then they might call the Chester's where I was working and say, hey, manager, we are short. It looks like we're going to run out of meat. How are you doing? And my manager would say, oh, we're kind of slower than anticipated. We had extra meat. I can give you 2 boxes. And so then they're like, hey, David, why don't you take these 2 boxes of meat, rush it over to this other store so they can add it to their inventory. Well, in a transfer like that, the cost of that meat needs to be subtracted from my Chesters and added to the other Chesters to get an actual, more accurate cost of goods sold. So let's put some of this information into practice. So our August purchases for the kitchen totaled $5,000, and you noted 3 transfers at the bar totaling $350. The August purchases for the bar totaled $2,500. The bar manager sent $150 worth of product to the kitchen. So what is the actual food cost and what is the actual beverage cost? Because remember, we're going to transfer some items to and from. So the first thing we want to do is calculate what our cost of goods sold is. Okay, and so let's do that first with our food. So remember, our beginning inventory, $2,500 plus our purchases for the month, $7,500 is our total available inventory. And then we subtract our ending inventory. Gives me $6,500 is my cost of goods sold. Okay? Now let's do it for the bar. So we have a beginning inventory of $650. Our purchases for the month is $2,500. So that gives me $3,150 as my total available inventory. Then I'm going to subtract my ending is $225. So that gives me a cost of goods sold of $2,925. Okay, so that's where we get started. Now we actually need to account for our transfers. Okay, so I'm going to come on over here and do my bar. So my food, is $6,500. Okay, that's my cost of goods sold. But I transferred to the bar, I'm going to subtract $350, and I'm going to add from the bar $150. Okay, so essentially I'm going to be subtracting, when you combine these two, subtracting 200, which gives me 6,300 is my actual cost of goods sold for food. Now let's go to the beverage side. On the beverage side, we have $2,925, and we are going to subtract our $150 that went to the kitchen, but we're going to add in our $350 that came from the kitchen. So in this case, we're going to be adding 200. And so when we add 200 to our number, we have $3,125. This gives us our actual cost of food sold and our actual cost of beverages sold.